Hi all, how are you? Thank you so much for being here today to discuss arts publishing. I know it's rainy, but we're dry in here and so thrilled to have all of you. My name is Katarina. I come from a company called Artist Rights Society. We represent the intellectual property rights of artists, estates, foundations, living artists, and I've also been sort of spearheading our kind of more emerging technologies in art. But I'm really excited today to talk about publishing and art, sort of where it all comes from, where we are now, and where it's moving as well. So I want to just quickly briefly introduce my esteemed panelists here. We have to my left, we have Pauline. Pauline she's a founder and CEO of Ars Publicata. She'll tell us a little bit about that in a second. Then we have Emma. Emma is a curator of public programs at Center for Arts Research and Alliance, or CARA for short. And then we have Allie. Allie is an initiatives manager at United States Artists, a Chicago-based nonprofit organization. And of course, then all the way to my left, I have Hunter. Hunter is a vice president of Cultural Counsel, and he's also the founding editor of the Miami Rail. Now, hi guys, first of all, and thank you so much for being here with us. I wonder if you all can kind of just go down, the line and tell us a little bit about your various organizations. I'll start with you, Pauline, just simply because you're sitting to my left, and then, we'll take it from there.
Hello, everyone. We founded Ars Publicata, which is an online compendium of fine art editions. We essentially digitally publish catalog raisonnés and work listings to document editions artworks by about 400 significant contemporary artists. And we also will be publishing editions by some of these artists to help fund the site and to add to the publishing efforts of this website.
Thank you, Pauline. And Emmy?
Hi, everybody. It's now working. My name is Emmy. I am the curator of public programs at a newly opened organization in the West Village in New York City called Center for Art Research and Alliances. We are a publisher, an exhibition space, and a bookstore and a program space aiming to expand public discourse through research and acknowledgement of art's abundant pasts and presents and futures. So.
Thank you so much. And Allie?
Thank you so much. My name is Allie Linn. I use they, them pronouns. And I'm initiatives manager at United States Artists. We use the acronym USA. USA is a national nonprofit organization that gives unrestricted money to artists. So we're probably best known for the USA Fellowship. Each year, roughly 50 artists across all disciplines and career stages in the country receive this award, and it's completely no strings attached, unrestricted money. So we really believe in being a conduit, giving money to artists. And recently, we've also been really interested in kind of expanding the different types of resources and support that we provide to our fellows beyond the cash award. And so it's really exciting to talk about publications today because publishing is a fairly new arm of our organization, but we've been kind of diving into it alongside thinking about things like providing financial planning to artists and legal services to artists and marketing support and design work. So we're thinking about it all really holistically, just ways to further support artistic practices.
I'm Hunter. I'm the Vice President of Cultural Counsel. We're a New York public relations, editorial consulting, and programming consulting. We do a lot of work with foundations, galleries, museums, fairs, artists, anybody that's looking to make some sort of meaningful impact in the art world, culture at large. Before that, I was the editor-in-chief of the Miami Rail, which was a sister publication of the Brooklyn Rail. So many of you out there might be knowing from that, wearing that hat. That was an artist-led publication that we launched in Miami about a decade ago, and it served as an archive and a record and a platform for people within South Florida to connect to each other and also to culture at large. So, great to meet you all.
Awesome, thank you all. Okay, so I'll start it just kind of really generally and broadly. It's actually a question that sort of interests me, which is arts publishing. How is that different? If it's not, that's also okay, than regular publishing. And what does that really mean today, arts publishing? Kind of how is it I don't know, what's the significance of it in the year 2022? Obviously, it's been around for, much more than just contemporary. So, yeah.
I can jump in.
Please.
I was hearing this morning, and it's one of those one of those huge questions, right? Publishing is written word. It's also visual information. It's sound. It's making any type of information public, and either in a ephemeral sense or in a permanent sense. So arts publishing, I think, obviously has some connection to arts and artists, but from my perspective and what I see, because I work in a lot of media, but also a lot of galleries who are putting out awesome catalogs, a lot of artists who are self-publishing books and distributing those as part of their practice. There's this emphasis on experimentation. There's these really interesting economies of scale that really zoom in on minuscule social relations where you're printing off or Xeroxing like 5 copies of a zine and distributing it at a fair to your friends, or you're putting something on the cover of Art Forum and that's getting picked up at a fair in Miami. So yeah, that's kind of like where I am at. It's just anything out in the public.
Yeah, I think it's useful to start really expansively there because when we were approached to do this panel, I was also kind of thinking about publishing as this really enormous field, and even arts publishing in particular. It really feels like it begins to encompass anything kind of like any media related to arts. It doesn't have to necessarily be writing. I think we're thinking about a lot of different disciplines and a lot of different media, and certainly that encompasses art books, catalogs, monographs, artist books. I think that's such an important part of this history as well, works that are specifically artworks in themselves. I'm kind of approaching this more from the editorial, arts writing, art criticism side of things, but each of these different arms is just personally really important to me. I know there's also a lot of different kind of publishing that we're doing on this panel, but a lot of connections too, and Emmy obviously has a huge background in art fairs or book fairs, I should say specifically, and that is also a big part of my background, having really formative years spent in book fairs in Baltimore, organizing the Publications and Multiples Fair, and then later the Spiral Bound Book Fair after PMF closed. So just as kind of like a general starting point, I think I'm thinking about all of these different kind of media when I'm thinking about art publishing, but really exciting to see too how archival work and archiving and kind of living documentation plays into all of this too.
I guess I'm going to say something about that next. Yeah, I mean, there's such a bigness to this question, publishing, and what is it in 2022? I don't think it's particularly special publishing in 2022, but yeah, I mean, I attended a similarly titled talk in 2016 at the New York Public Library, where the curator there, Arizuma Zaini, said that the fundamental element of publishing, the word publishing, is to make public. And I think that I guess that defines what art publishing is. What publishing is, and what we're all trying to do, is a matter of accessibility. Inherent in that is how it can serve the public. So whatever format that it is, and whatever kind of platform or content, whether or not it's being made by an artist, where a book or an online project might be a work in itself, or if it's a periodical where it's an occasion for a publication not to be a presentation of the work, but a way to reflect on the work. It's all of these different forms. Publishing as a very large and kind of porous umbrella. It's fundamentally about making it available to the public.
And Emmy, I'm curious, just Hunter brought up, artists self-publishing works. Am I correct that CARA allows for artists to kind of go onto your portal and then publish themselves? I'm just kind of curious as to the process there and who funds that.
No, that's not our model. Yeah,
No, sorry.
We're new, and but we certainly are, as a bookstore, as a book space. There's a way for us to support and disseminate those kinds of publications that are self-published or handmade, or are editions made by artists, but also a range of publications from the nonprofit institution to the Xerox or risograph scene maker. Yeah.
Pauline, might I be correct that your organization allows for artists to self-publish through your portal, through your organization?
In a way, yeah. Our kind of publishing is less editorial. What we do is document artists' edition oeuvres. So like Emmy said, publishing is making something public. And I think in our sense, this idea of 2022 and digital new forms of publishing is actually quite important, because catalog resumes and cataloging works by artists has always been around, and of course you make this public by publishing a book, but having it digital and freely accessible 24/7 from all over the world to anyone, it removes these barriers and truly makes it public, because anyone can visit our site and go through these artists' oeuvres and see what kind of editions they've made. And we collaborate with the artists to help them document their works. And if they're young artists or mid-career artists and they haven't actually done that much yet, where a catalog resume might not make sense and a publisher wouldn't commit to publishing a book, perhaps, we can work with them and just put together a digital listing of their works. And so in that sense, it's truly more public and collaborative with the artists. Yeah.
And I'm curious, I guess it's for all of you, but we could start with Pauline. How does that get funded? Do the artists pay for this themselves? Are these from grants that your organizations have? Where's the money sort of coming from?
Good question. In our case, it's really a passion project. We will be publishing editions and selling them through the site's gallery to help fund the project. But other than that, we are self-funded, and just kind of hope for this to be a starting point for more people to see the value in this kind of a documentation, digital, freely accessible, and then generate funding possibilities through that as we become more known and there's more appreciation for this.
I think, can I jump in on this funding thing? It's always something I'm thinking about. I mean, when we started the rail like 12 years ago, we went to the Knight Foundation and we were like, this needs to happen. Can we make this happen? And they're like, yes, this needs to happen. Let's make this happen. So, one source of funding is foundations. Another one, commercial entities, brands. We started working with the Oregon Hyundai. They're a big supporter of the arts throughout the world. They've got this sort of curatorial subset, Hyundai Artlab, and we launched an editorial platform for them that helps expand their reach, but also diverts support to individual writers and artists across the world that, from their vantage point globally, might not have relationships with. So there's a lot of people out there who are looking to get involved, and our challenge, and y'all's challenge, is to figure out those pathways. Which I think, going back to what publishing is in 2022, it's a circulatory system for me. It's that space that ideas travel through. It's infrastructure, it's technology, but it's also a medium that we use professionally and personally to last.
Yeah, I want to also just kind of piggyback on that, because I'm still quite, I'm following, I did say earlier that 2022 doesn't seem particularly special. It's over now. But also that what it does allow, it's not particularly special in that I don't believe it's necessarily like a kind of linear kind of question, right? Like 2022 versus the past, for example. And it is circular and it is porous, because something like the wonderful technology of Ars Publicata does make it immediately available. There is a democratization of information about multiples and publications and very, tangible objects that may have been produced, but it's still very much engaging with these, the book to me is a technology. It's very much still engaging with these tangible objects. But it's as a kind of almost education platform, I think of it as. It does allow for, it does support getting information about these things, about these histories. And I think that the kind of online space only has ever kind of supported that, but in no way do I think is it replacing print. That's not something that is quite replaceable. I think that from my experience and Allie's experience coming from the kind of art book fair community, it's more vibrant than ever before. And there's been a mushrooming of art book fairs all over the world. And that is being, and information about that and communities surrounding that is only ever supported by online space.
Yeah, I feel like this question of like, it is special or it is not special, I don't think anyone on this platform, or I'm sure in the audience, needs publishing justified. I feel like we're all like real lovers of publishing and publications, and just thinking about like the what is next. Like I think that is the question, even with the title of this panel, like what does it mean, the future of publishing, maybe like a future of publishing. The present still feels incredibly rich. There's always so much discourse about the end of arts criticism or the end of print media, or X is in crisis, Y is in crisis. And I think, all of those things can be discussed in a really interesting conversations, but to your point, it doesn't feel like any of these things are coming to an end. A new upcoming technology is never going to kind of detract from the beauty of the material, whether print or digital, that I think we're all really excited about.
So it sounds like the technology is more supporting what the core actual value or in publishing is, not, again, it's not replacing it at all. But I wonder, when it comes to these new technologies, you all are obviously digital as well and online. What are the new technologies that you guys are using to help artists or engage in the public, engage with the public? What are things that today simply, 5 years ago even, would just not be possible, if there are anything, or 10 years ago?
I think it feels kind of analog on my side. We produce 2 publications now at United States Artists. New Sons, which my colleague Jess Ferrer leads. We're a kind of small collaborative. Jess, Nadine Nakanishi, Kate Blair, and I work on New Sons. And then I also oversee a publication called Shift Space, which is a second digital publication that kind of specifically explores this nebulous emerging field of arts and technology. And that's a publication that we actually also produce in conjunction with Knight Foundation for a fellowship that we administer for Knight. This is a little bit convoluted, but just to give some background. So the Knight Arts and Tech Fellowship is another award that we oversee at USA, awarded to 5 artists or collaboratives each year, an unrestricted grant of $50,000. And just to give a little bit of background to kind of answer your question, Knight Foundation approached United States Artists in early 2020, maybe end of 2019, interested in kind of creating this fellowship program, creating more outlets of support for artists working with new media and art and tech-based practices. And they really envisioned an award that, yes, there would be an unrestricted cash award, but there would also be a convening each year, an opportunity for there to be kind of network building in this field and for artists to also meet the writers and the curators that are doing this work. We started work on this fellowship in probably February 2020, so very quickly the pandemic happened. It became clear that a physical in-person convening would not be possible or safe or sustainable. And we proposed kind of taking that budget, to also go back to this money question that you were asking, a budget that had been specifically kind of earmarked for an in-person gathering, to move that towards making a publication. It was kind of a very spur-of-the-moment idea, but we were meeting so many writers who were such an integral part of this arts and tech ecosystem, and they weren't necessarily perfect candidates for a fellowship that was specifically for artists, more studio-based artists, but it felt really important to kind of capture their practices and support their practices, and specifically in the pandemic, when we know, even the most widely read and successful arts writers in this field, for the most part, have incredibly precarious careers. Most of them are freelance. Most of them are still going piece to piece and being wildly underpaid for this work. So it was also an opportunity to think about, how can we do a publication that, yes, illuminates these artists, these fellows, and really showcases their practices, but also is a way to continue making work for the incredibly important writers in this field. Sorry, did you have a question, Hunter?
Well, I think what I love about Knight's shift space is that sort of how you're using the technology as a medium. Emmy, you said earlier that books are technologies. And so I've been thinking about publishing as technology in both medium. What like play or paint. I'm so happy that Kevin Arrow just walked in here. I was flipping through.
I was going to say shout out Kevin Arrow, making of fine zines.
I was going through old zip files trying to find slides, quickly behind, and I found the zine that you did, Tropical Depression, South Beach, 1996, which is just this amazing document of a moment that is receding further into the sands of time, but that we have because you've made publishing your medium. But on the flip side of that, with tech and the sort of the boundless opportunities that presents. Pauline, you were saying earlier that there's certain barriers for entry. For an artist that wants to do a catalog resume, price for the gallery and the production costs, like the weight of these things. That's something. How heavy are catalog resumes? They're pretty big, huh?
Yeah, quite heavy, quite expensive to produce, and obviously digital makes it so much easiar.
About how expensive would you say? Because I have been shocked when I've heard what it takes to produce a catalog resume. What around ballpark does it cost?
I honestly couldn't say, but because it really depends on how extensive.
$80,000.
But yeah, I think digital is a bit different. You have different kind of costs and a different approach. And what we've seen throughout the research process, and especially during the pandemic, is that a lot of artist studios and publishers and gallery websites were updated. A lot of them took the time during the pandemic to update their sites and archive more and more works. So we actually had access to a lot of this information and made it a lot easier to compile catalog resumes and listings with the artists. And this collaborative approach is also something that we want to emphasize on the website and use technologies to encourage users of the site to send in information. So if they have feedback on a work, missing details, anything they can contribute to help us improve the information that we have, then that is a big benefit of being digital and using new technologies.
I want to follow with that, which I don't remember the magazine that it was, but you know how like in the early 2000s we were all afraid of what would happen to print, and we were like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And this is now about like 12 years ago, and the visual theorist Rick Poynter wrote that maybe we'll approach a kind of golden age of print where you have to ask ourselves, like, with the new technologies available, what really needs to be committed to print, And I think that when there's certain things that I feel must be for its materiality, for its temporality, for the space that it is. It's an architecture. It's also time-based as an experience, but there are publications like the catalog raisonné that absolutely, I agree, calls for moving and shifting to a digital realm, because new discoveries are happening all the time when you're looking at the body of work of an artist. And to have to commit that to print when it's only going to be updated is, it's not necessarily sustainable practice, right? Because it's through a process of research that gets updated, and as a work that it is, its aim is to be a comprehensive compendium, and so it makes sense to be online, absolutely. But then there's, like if you still think about the necessity of the pamphlet in kind of context of activism or just even information being disseminated in general, about COVID, like in certain communities that we have to remind ourselves don't necessarily even have the privilege of the internet. So, yeah.
And I'm curious, I come from, as I said, a background of kind of IP, and I know how we work with books, and when somebody approaches us, we sort of clear for the artist, for everything, make sure everything is kosher and done properly. Your relationships with artists themselves and the writers of these works, how does that come about? Usually who approaches you? How closely are you working with the client? Who is the client, really? Yeah, I'm just curious if you guys can tell me some about that.
I can get started.
Thank you.
I mean, one thing I really love about the publications that we're running at United States Artists is that they are extremely high touch and that we work really, really closely with everybody that we're commissioning. I think New Suns is a nice way to talk about this. New Suns as a publication started in about 2020 also, I want to say. We're producing about 3 digital issues of New Suns a year, and it is just in this constant kind of evolution, constantly changing. We're in this process of iterating and reiterating. And it's just a really special collaborative project where I think we're all coming from, again, very different publishing backgrounds. We're all really interested in, always having more outlets to commission work, to commission writing, sound work, artwork. But we're really learning in real time in a lot of ways. And so I think about even the contract that we put together for all of the artists. I would say it gets edited and updated every round, every time we're working on an issue, because we're directly responding to questions, and we want to make it as agreeable a process as possible. We really want the artist to always have the agency in these kinds of conversations, to be able to go back and edit an interview that they work on, like very minor things that I think are just not always taken into account. When sometimes something will go public and someone is like, I feel extremely misquoted in this, I don't feel like this is a representation. So we really prioritize that process of working very closely with an artist, paying adequately, giving enough time. All of these things just feel so vital to any kind of commissioning structure. And again, it's kind of constantly evolving and changing.
Pay adequately. I know this is a question and I don't want to go on a long tangent, but I think that
Please.
one of the key components, I think, to any healthy ecosystem is putting a priority on care for artists and writers and publishers and everyone else that just makes that happen, makes the world go round. And that's a good writer's fleet in the writing world. Like that's what that boils down to, and that sadly is absent from certain places in traditional media. And I think that with the new kind of expanded sense of it, there's new foundations or brands or whatever coming to the table and putting more dollars on the table, and that can be distributed to the writers, and so that we can be a little more comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah, and not even just best practices, but I also think it is just an enormous responsibility we have when we're working in a larger organization, whether that is a nonprofit or especially a foundation. When you think about so many of the publications that are produced, so many artists run and self-published projects, there truly is no money to work with, and a lot of it is a labor of love, and a lot of it is voluntary. And that is such an important part of this ecosystem too, and I have participated in that a lot, and I have a lot of love for that world. But I feel like when we have the opportunity to be backed by other institutions, it's an enormous responsibility to set a precedent for what better pay can look like. And not even just for writers, but also for illustrators and editors, and just recognizing that there are so many roles that go into a publishing project.
And when you're creating these catalog raisonnés or other published works, are you taking into account these days sort of how to get new audiences? I'd imagine you are, right? New audiences coming to you. Is there a kind of a strategy in 2022 that looks different than what it was, again, maybe half a decade or a decade ago?
I guess my question is new for whom? And what is new? Because when I think about the work that we're doing at CARA, or just, even in previous roles, I was very much involved with printed matter art book fairs before this. It's not about like reaching necessarily new as if that was somehow identifiable, but expanding, because there are voices and communities and histories that are not necessarily part of the mix of wherever you are. We are what's new for Nada, what's new for for me. I'm thinking about like the idea of editions, the wonderful like master editions that's presented at Arts Publicata, for example, and where I'm sitting thinking about the EFA booth that's right next to us, that's separated by a wall, and the fact that Robert Blackburn, as a master print shop, was the original master printer at ULAE that's made these editions by this canon of editions, Rauschenberg, Jasper Johns. And it's it's thinking about expanding, right? Let's talk about how can we maybe support bringing in that history to even the idea of historicizing editions and multiples, like the work that Robert Blackburn has done, for example. So yeah, I think new isn't necessarily something I can identify, or not even necessarily belonging to like a generation, but a matter of expanding and acknowledging that there are different communities in abundance that have been making amazing work and giving platforms to amazing artists and histories that may not necessarily be where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think for us, I like the term expanding the audience. For us, I think a big part of this platform is to, besides documenting editions and making the information accessible, also educating people on editions, elevating a medium a little bit, making it clear what is an edition. For a lot of people, they don't really know the difference between a print and a poster, or a multiple and a reproduction. And so introducing that to a larger audience and generating higher appreciation for editions, I think, is where this platform comes in. And then on the artist side, we've started with this sort of core of 400 of the most significant contemporary artists, but of course what's vital is that we expand that roster of artists and include younger artists and artists that have maybe not been as represented in other ways in terms of traditional media, traditional catalog publishing, or gallery representation, and kind of making sure that we're representing a larger list of artists and a larger variety.
Sure, that actually leads in well to another question, which is, I just asked about audiences, but I'm curious about content as well. I mean, as a layman who, admittedly does not work in publishing, but of course the kind of energy has changed around, the importance for different points of views and for maybe underrepresented groups to have, the time and the space to be seen. And I'm wondering if, again, this is something that has been kind of liberating in the last couple of years, if that shift has, if not, if maybe it's all just lip service and in fact that's not actually, what people are interested in. Yeah, has there been that kind of cultural change that I think we're all feeling in general? Has that had a big impact on your various publishing endeavors?
From my perspective, from what I see, I see that there's a lot of there's a huge drive across the field, from traditional publishing like Big Five down to admittance into writing programs, down to mastheads across all the magazines that we're working with, to really like bring in not just communities but places as well, where it's like, all right, well, regionally, regional publishing is something that I've always been very interesting, and I think that I've seen a lot of great things pop up.
Can you tell us, Hunter, what regional publishing is exactly?
So like community-based or like things that aren't in Lower Manhattan, basically. Burn Away down here does fantastic work. Glass Tire in Texas, and there are others that I'm blanking on right now. But
No, but thank you. That's out there. No, but I didn't mean to interrupt you. Were you saying something else? I apologize. Yeah, does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's always just a huge priority for all of our work at United States Artists, publishing or not, that we're to try to capture a country. We're funding across the country. That includes all the territories. That includes Puerto Rico and Guam. It's incredibly important to, not just be operating within an LA, NYC kind of discourse. There's so many incredible artists working in very rural areas that might not have as much access to publishing. And so we're thinking about, all the time, a diversity of geography, career stages, identities. I mean, that is just built into all of the work. It's incredibly important. And in terms of, going back to your audience question as well, thinking about a lot of different ways to engage with that material. I don't know which one of my colleagues coined this in regards to our work with New Sons, but this idea of the skimmer, swimmer, or diver has really led the way that we think about kind of digestibility of content, and the idea of somebody who maybe comes to the site and looks at it but doesn't really spend time with it, someone who's vaguely reading a little bit, someone who's really spending time and engaging. And of course, in a perfect world, every reader to your publication, every visitor to your site is deeply engaged. But that's just not realistic, and that's not how people spend time on the internet. If you look at metrics of how long people are on pages on the internet, it can be seconds, unless it's brain numbing and sucking you in for engagement and views. So thinking about what can be a useful kind of outlet, whether somebody wants to look at something for 10 seconds or a half an hour. And often that means really digestible kind of bits of writing and commissions. We might have, a lot of 500 word or 750 word commissions on that site. And, that's not going to do the same thing as a 3,000 word long form essay, but getting to the kernel of something really quickly to kind of invoke curiosity. Because also, again, we're working with writers and artists across a lot of different geographies and places. And in a way, each of those artists might have its own little audience. Maybe they intersect and overlap or not. But I think that is one of the guiding factors for us with New Sons is how can it be really exciting and fun and invoke curiosity, and how can somebody, maybe they went to a residency with someone and they see that they were commissioned to do a piece, and so they begin with that piece. But how can you navigate someone's experience through a really playful website where then they are introduced to 6 or 7 new artists and writers?
Yeah, and I guess, that's very much similar for Cara too, is how to kind of grow. We're new, we just opened October 1st, but...
and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But it's it's community and audience is not something that you can just kind of immediately expect. It's something you earn and needs to kind of organically grow. And in order to kind of think about expanding that, it also, it's kind of a chicken or egg situation. It is identifying artists that you want to support, and thinking about their own respective universes, right? And sometimes overlapping, but what kind of a work can lead to another work, and how kind of within Cara, for example, we have an exhibition program that is kind of following a more institutional schedule, which is, a show opening October, ending in March. And so there's a kind of generous framework, and within that allow for new voices and programs and constellations to kind of enter the picture. That's kind of organically growing from the one launching point of supporting an artist through providing exhibition space. So it's organic. It's we had a soft opening program this past summer, which was a way to do that, inviting an artist to then invite a friend to then invite a friend to be part of a program, and that's we're that's kind of our current strategy is get organic contamination of our building, and grow community that way.
And I also think that kind of goes back to this idea of, if we're actually prioritizing the relationship with the writer or the person that we're commissioning, maybe even before we're thinking about audience or how it exists afterwards, if that is really where the emphasis is going, maybe that's a better way to cultivate a beneficial experience for that writer. And I know that's definitely true of the work you're doing at Kara. I'm thinking about like Marilyn Nance's book that just came out, and Camille worked so closely with Marilyn and the whole staff. I mean, I think that again, it's, the audience will begin to grow and the community will grow out of that and be engaged. But what does it mean to really prioritize working with someone for a long period of time and really surrounding them with the support that they need?
I just want to jump in really quickly to tell everyone to buy Marilyn's book. It's absolutely amazing.
And speaking of making available to the public and disseminating, where it's, and as an object, it's now sold out, and you can only find it at Kara. So there is still very much a demand for a physical book. There's actually, right here, you're seeing it right behind Hunter, and I wanted to show that because it specifically it kind of has an awareness of its objectness. It's this history of photographs that she took when she was 23 years old. She went to Lagos, Nigeria, and documented and made images from experience at this festival. And here's a photo of the launch at Kara in the bookstore, where it was Marilyn's amazing entire community and her Brooklyn community, and she brought in elders that were present at Festac 77. So that's just an illustration of, I guess, what we're saying. Yeah.
No, I love in-person experiential things. I mean, thank God that it seems like today people really, really want that and are craving that, so that's amazing. But I'm curious also when it comes to sort of, again, on technology and marketing, how much do you all bear that in mind when choosing a project? I know I try not to roll my eyes saying this, but does it matter how much of a, let's say, social media presence an artist has? Do you try to market through those avenues and channels, or is it really just, again, organic word of mouth?
I guess just jumping from that Marilyn example.
Yes, it's sold out. It's a great example.
Well, I mean, it's a little bit of an outlier because Marilyn Nance is, for somebody of her generation, which is my mother's generation, she is amazing at social media. But at the same time, there's this kind of sensitive way to handle her images, which has, like the book itself and its objectness. It speaks to kind of digital fugitivity of your image and how it can just be, go out into the world and leave your hands and leave your grasp. And Artists' Rights Society is very much something that Marilyn works with in order to protect her images, but yeah, it's she's been wonderful at kind of word of mouth, but also via Instagram. But in terms of a kind of marketing strategy, I mean, we can't. That's just kind of a necessity these days if you want people to come to your event. But again, it's not necessarily like a kind of binary thing, right? It's like it supports the practice of these objects.
Instagram. Follow us all on Instagram. But I think we should do a Q&A and open it up to everybody.
Sure, please. Yes, thank you guys so much as well, I want to say. And yeah, we'd love to take some questions, We'd love to take some questions from the audience as well. Any questions? Please.
Didn't Facebook and Vice get together because video is more expensive to produce and they could pump more money into it, and it just was, there was never... I think it wasn't it?
I mean, I think it's not unlike, sorry, Pauline, it's not unlike this threat of the internet. It's like, it's not necessarily a threat or replacing a form. It's just a different form, I guess. And it's like, there's an amazing thing called the Tech Zine Fair, and then there's also, you see that film artists embracing the book form. So it is this circular thing where, artists these days the internet is part of our lives. It becomes content for printed materials, like content in algorithms and code and things that we live with in our digital lives, And just like filmmakers embracing the way time operates in book form versus how it works in video, I think there are ways for those things to kind of inform each other and not necessarily be one or the other.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't see video as a replacement of anything, but I do see a lot of publishers release videos when they publish an art publisher, when they publish a new edition, they might come out with a video talking to the artist, going into the artist's studio, maybe the print shop, and some kind of behind the scenes context, which I think is really interesting and also helps. Going back, we had a question about whether you still need the physicality of books and of things, and when it comes to artwork, nowadays a lot of people buy artworks online. They don't have to see them in person, they don't have to touch them, they buy it and they get it shipped. But through the videos, you get a little bit of that experience. You get to see inside an artist's studio, you get to see a little bit more of the 3D texture, physicality of a work, and I think that they complement each other really well.
I will just add, this is a little bit different than what your question was, but I've been thinking about just inclusion of video more generally, because we have really been striving to make all of our publications accessible, which is a big question, and there's a lot of ways that they're still not accessible. But one thing that we always do with our online publications is have an audio version of all the essays. And of course, we always have image descriptions and image IDs for screen readers. But video has posed the problem just internally, where it's often outside of the budget that we've allocated for access. Just to be really transparent, it just takes a lot more time and a lot more funding to make video work, and especially multimedia work, truly accessible. And in the past, we've often kind of decided if it's not fully accessible, we won't put it on the site. And so we have steered clear of video when it would have been wonderful to have it, but until it's something that can be equally, how do you define equally is a different question, but can be equally experienced by someone who is low vision or low hearing. We've kind of been, it's an ongoing question, and so I think it's just part of this question about video that I often don't see addressed, but I think it's part of the conversation.
Yes, Sunny.
Sunny.
That have really pioneered digital publishing and video publishing, and have made custom screen readers and artists, and also made their super digitally native publishing accessible. But thinking about even the accessibility as this kind of artistic intervention.
Yeah, I hate the word content, even though I kind of live in it, but Triple Canopy is a perfect example of just the best ideas packaged in the best ideas. Triple Canopy is amazing.
Yeah, I guess their slogan is publishing in an expanded field, right? Yeah, but I guess it's also important to identify how we're kind of circling around these formats. It's there's works in themselves that are books, that are publishing, that are in video form, and then there's video in the way that is reflecting on work, and it seems to be a little kind of muddied at the moment. You see video content. Sorry, Hunter. Like Art21, that makes it accessible, right? You can watch that online. It's not necessarily the work in itself in terms of I just wanted to kind of note that confusion, I think, or what we're all kind of circling around.
Thank you. Yes, please.
For people, for artists who self-publish work without the publisher, yet they still distribute their books through your platform, or how do you think they can distribute their publication with self-publisher?
So sorry, the question was for artists who self-publish their works, can they still be involved with your platforms and publish through your platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start since I'm having the mic to my face. The thing is, it's a question of dissemination and distribution is always, I mean, we're talking about publishing and its fundamental meaning being for the public and how does one distribute. And, I'm thinking of this still not still, but quite vibrant and growing community of the art book fair that Sunny is part of. It was very much a big part of Not an Art Fair last year. There's something about kind of presence, right, and being able to also represent your creations and kind of create a direct market for your books and to be able to talk about it and actually to gather. I mean, we're here together talking about how things exist online. We're here together. Gathering and presence is still very much important, and I think finding, like at Cara, we have a bookstore. Printed Matter has a bookstore that supports self-published works by artists. That is a point of distribution and dissemination, or a way for people to happen upon their self-published works. And there are online spaces for that too. There are artist books being, featured in the Ars Publicata site, for example, which Pauline will talk about. But yeah, I think that's also something that, funnily the internet allows is a way to support your print practice, your self-published print practice, through these online channels like Instagram and online book fairs even.
Yeah, we don't distribute at United States Artists. We're just self-publishing, always looking for contributors. If anyone's ever interested, we would love to commission more folks. But I'll just give another shout out to Printed Matter, Wendy's Subway, Ulysses. There are so many kind of artist bookstores that are also really fundamental to that part of the conversation.
Do we have any other questions? No? Oh, one more. Okay, perfect. Please.
So I'm an arts writer and so I wonder, as publishers, as editors, where do you go when you're looking for writers? Does it come from people that you already work with, past work? I guess what is that process?
So I think the question is, for you all, how do you find, right, for publishers, how do you find writers and the talent sort of that you're choosing to publish?
I do a lot of Googling, and I do a lot of reading, and I track bylines, and I follow people, and I become their fans, and then I read what they're writing, and then I figure out how I can help them connect to new projects. So I'm always looking for new people to meet. It's very much my job. But you guys do. I mean, you do a lot of super regional, targeted. I think the structure of the main fellowship is you're getting nominators from different localities across the country to nominate people in their disciplines so that y'all can fund them. But that's also kind of how publications are working as well, because you're working like Shift Space 2, was that Natalia? So Natalia Zoluega, who runs Name Publications, which is down on like Bird Road or somewhere. Gene Moreno edited, commissioned, and had a strong place, a sense of, it had a feeling of Miami, which was so nice because the fellowship was connected to Miami. So I think always thinking way beyond Manhattan.
Yeah, I mean, I was basically going to say that, but I mean, definitely a lot of the work I really care about is researching and trying to find names that haven't published as much. But I do have the real privilege to work with a guest editor each year on this publication. And I work very closely with them to kind of come up with a list of names each year. So we're currently working on the 3rd issue, and that will be under wraps until we launch in March. But I can give a little teaser that one is a little more Bay Area specific than we've done in the past. So really excited to, again, just learn much more about the kind of regional arts writing community there than I was familiar with previously. And as Hunter mentioned, issue 2, which we just launched this year, I was working very closely with Natalia, and she introduced me to, so many incredible writers in Miami specifically. Ade Omotosho is a really incredible arts writer. Ernesto Rosa, incredible artist down here who's also a writer. But not everyone was from Miami. And again, because it's kind of tied to our work at United States Artists, we're trying to get really broad geography. So really, there's always going to be New York and LA representation, and that's also really important because there's a reason why writers gravitate to those cities, but really trying to fill in the gaps across the United States. And in the first...
So when you guys do something in Boston, you should talk to Jameson, who runs the Boston Art Review, and is another wonderful regional.
Yes, would love that. And the first issue, working with Salome Asega, who's also an incredible artist, writer, curator. And so, thinking about regionality, but also just networks and writers who have worked with other writers, who have worked with other writers and met in different capacities. So yeah, it's a big part of our organization is kind of like forever trying to reach folks who aren't like the same names that you see over and over. But that's just like a huge part of what I'm always doing is just like research into the smallest kind of artist-run publications and spaces across the country.
Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you all so much. Thank you so much to my panelists.
Thank
Really,
you.
it was so appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here today. And yeah, enjoy the fair. Thank you.
I forgot to shout out, speaking of regional, really important to shout out the work that's being done at Dale Zine, which is just in Little River, and it is, I consider it to kind of be really important in the way, in the culture, in the zine culture and art book culture that they're creating. And they're, in my mind, kind of spiritually a kind of counterpart of Printed Matters right here in Miami, so.
Did a beautiful radio show yesterday.
Yeah, and they have a
right
booth here at Nada. Yeah.
Awesome. Go check it out. Okay, thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day, and thank you guys.